Thanksgiving. That one day a year when everything feels warm, cozy, and just a little bit unhinged. The food's cooking, the family's gathered, and somewhere out there, someone's already arguing with customer service. Because nothing says holiday spirit like a side of chaos with your turkey. 1. Let's kick things off with a culinary crisis in Florida. A woman frantically called 911 because her turkey, after hours in the oven, was still stubbornly raw. She wasn't complaining about her cooking skills or a faulty oven. Oh no. She was convinced the grocery store had sold her a defective turkey, one that was biologically incapable of being cooked. She wanted the police to investigate this foul play immediately. Forget a refund, she was demanding justice for her uncooked bird and the emotional ruin of her dinner. 2. In Ohio, a Thanksgiving dinner turned into a crime scene, at least according to one family member who dialed 911. The emergency? Her 2 adult sons were about to come to blows over the last scoop of gravy. The dispatcher had to calmly explain that gravy theft and unequal gravy distribution were not, in fact, arrestable offenses. You have to wonder what the police response time is for a full-scale mashed potato riot when things really get out of hand. 3. A man from Connecticut filed a formal complaint with Ocean Spray because his canned cranberry sauce slid out of the can in a perfect, smooth cylinder. He was outraged. He claimed the iconic can-shaped ridges were an essential part of the Thanksgiving experience, and their absence ruined the aesthetic of his entire dinner plate. He wasn't asking for money. He demanded a written apology for the emotional distress caused by the unnervingly smooth, ridgeless jelly. 4. A man in Arizona called the police to have his own in-laws removed from his Thanksgiving dinner. Their crime? They showed up unannounced. He told the dispatcher he had only prepared enough food for his immediate family, and their presence was causing logistical and emotional chaos. The officers who arrived on scene ended up mediating a truce that involved the in-laws agreeing to go pick up an extra pumpkin pie as a peace offering for their transgression. 5. A homeowners association in Texas received a furious complaint about a neighbor's front yard inflatable turkey. The issue wasn't its size or that it was tacky. The problem was that it was too realistic and was traumatizing the neighborhood children, who now believed their parents were cooking a beloved cartoon character for dinner. The HOA was asked to intervene and force the neighbor to deflate the emotionally scarring 10-foot-tall poultry before it caused permanent psychological damage. 6. A woman flying home for Thanksgiving filed a formal complaint against an airline after they refused to let her pumpkin pie have its own seat. She had purchased a full fare ticket for Mr. Pie, complete with a name on the booking, arguing it was too precious to go in the overhead bin. The flight crew, citing safety regulations and common sense, insisted the pie be stowed. The woman accused them of blatant pastry discrimination and demanded a full refund for her pie's unused ticket. 7. A guest at a major hotel chain's Thanksgiving buffet filed a 1-star review and demanded a full refund for his meal. Why? The big screen TV in the dining hall was showing the football game, but the volume was turned off. He argued that the silent, oppressive atmosphere of a muted game completely ruined the holiday, making it impossible to digest his turkey properly. He wrote that watching football without sound was a violation of the spirit of Thanksgiving itself. 8. A shopper in Pennsylvania lodged a complaint with the Butterball Turkey Company, feeling utterly deceived. She was under the impression that the turkeys were pre-buttered, or somehow contained butter within the meat itself. After cooking the bird and finding it was just regular turkey, she called the customer service hotline to report false advertising. The representative had to gently explain that the name, Butterball, refers to the breed's plump shape, not its dairy content. 9. A man in New Jersey called the police on Thanksgiving afternoon to report a future crime. He wanted officers to go to a local Best Buy and preemptively arrest the people already lining up for Black Friday deals. He claimed their camping out was a public nuisance and a clear sign of impending retail-fueled insanity. He insisted that a proactive police presence was needed to prevent the inevitable chaos he saw brewing from his living room window. 10. A resident of a California apartment complex filed an official complaint against her neighbor for excessive and aggressive holiday smells. She claimed the aroma of his roasting turkey was so powerful it was invading her personal airspace and making her own vegan tofu turkey taste like sad seasoned sponge. She didn't want him to stop cooking. She demanded he install a commercial-grade ventilation system to redirect the offending Thanksgiving scent away from her unit. 11. The local police department in Illinois received a desperate plea from a father on Thanksgiving Day. His teenage son had locked himself in the house's only full bathroom an hour before guests were scheduled to arrive. The father wasn't worried about his son's well-being. He was furious that the prolonged showering was a deliberate act of sabotage against the family's dinner schedule. He demanded the police come and forcibly remove his son so his arriving aunt could use the restroom. 12. Breaking the wishbone is a sacred Thanksgiving tradition, but for one family in Oregon, it became grounds for a formal grievance. A man filed a complaint in small claims court against his own brother. The claim stated that his brother used an illegal two-handed twisting technique instead of the standard pull, thereby unfairly winning the larger piece. He wasn't just seeking emotional damages. He wanted the judge to nullify the wish and order a ceremonial re-break with a new wishbone. 13. A shopper in Georgia filed a complaint with a grocery store over poultry propaganda. The issue: the turkey packaging showed a cheerful cartoon bird smiling in a pilgrim hat. She demanded all future turkey labels be emotionally neutral, arguing that cheerful poultry images constituted pre-consumption gaslighting for her children, who burst into tears before dinner. She accused the store of marketing emotional trauma as holiday cheer. 14. Ever thought you could file a complaint against a parade? A resident of a Manhattan high-rise did just that. He filed a formal complaint with the city against the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade organizers. His issue? The giant Snoopy balloon hovered outside his 15th floor apartment window for a full 2 minutes, invading his privacy and blocking his view of the less offensive floats. He demanded compensation for the momentary beagle-induced obstruction. 15. A furious email landed in the inbox of a Thanksgiving catering company with the subject line, "Mashed potato fraud." The client claimed the mashed potatoes delivered were criminally smooth and suspiciously uniform. He argued that true Thanksgiving potatoes should be lumpy and rustic, and the silky texture proved they used instant potato flakes. He accused them of insulting his guests' palates and trying to pass off powdered sadness as a legitimate side dish. 16. Thanksgiving morning in Virginia took a smoky turn when a resident called the local HOA, not the fire department, to report a culinary violation. His neighbor's backyard smoker, meant for turkey, was allegedly producing non-traditional aromas and unauthorized visible smoke. The HOA responded with a written warning for unlicensed seasonal cooking practices and a $150 fine for olfactory misconduct before 9 a.m. 17. A tourist visiting the historic site of Plymouth Rock filed a formal complaint with the town's visitor bureau. He was outraged that the rock was, in his words, just a regular-sized rock and not the monumental boulder he had imagined from grade school textbooks. He accused the town of false advertising and demanded a refund for his parking fees and the emotional deflation he experienced upon seeing the historically insignificant pebble. 18. The day after Thanksgiving is all about leftovers, but for one man in Indiana, it was about litigation. He sent a legal notice to the manufacturer of his plastic food containers. His complaint alleged that the container, which promised to keep food fresh, failed to preserve the crispiness of his leftover turkey skin, allowing it to become unacceptably flaccid and rubbery. He claimed this was a breach of warranty and demanded a lifetime supply of crisp-preserving containers. 19. A shopper at a Walmart in Michigan took his complaint straight to the corporate office after a harrowing Thanksgiving Day experience. His issue? The store had already begun playing Christmas music. He wrote that the premature Yuletide cheer was a direct assault on the sanctity of Thanksgiving, creating a stressful atmosphere that rushed his last-minute pie crust purchase. He demanded a formal apology for the forced and aggressive holiday transition. 20. Tying up a 911 emergency line is a serious offense, but that didn't stop a man from Kentucky from trying. He called to ask the dispatcher for the exact roasting time per pound for his 23-pound turkey. When the dispatcher explained that this was not an emergency, the man became irate, arguing that an undercooked turkey would ruin the entire holiday for 20 people, which he classified as a major domestic crisis worthy of their immediate expert consultation. 21. A major television network received a strongly worded letter from a viewer in Wisconsin about their Thanksgiving football broadcast. The complaint wasn't about the game, the teams, or the commercials. The man was upset that the commentators were overly focused on gameplay analysis and failed to share personal Thanksgiving anecdotes or discuss what foods they were looking forward to eating. He felt their lack of festive banter sucked the holiday spirit right out of the broadcast. 22. Even pets aren't safe from Thanksgiving drama. A luxury pet hotel in California faced the wrath of a client who had boarded her poodle for the holiday. She filed a 1-star review complaining that the facility's gourmet turkey dinner for the dogs was inauthentic. The gravy, she claimed, lacked the viscosity of a true pan-dripping reduction, and the green bean slivers were clearly frozen, not fresh. She accused them of cutting corners and disrespecting her dog's sophisticated palate. 23. The post-dinner board game is a tradition for many, but it led one woman in Florida to seek law enforcement intervention. She called the non-emergency police line to report that her nephew was blatantly cheating at Monopoly by acting as the banker and slipping himself extra $500 bills. She didn't want him arrested. She wanted an officer to come to the house and serve as an impartial and official auditor for the remainder of the game. 24. At a Kroger in Massachusetts, a man caused a scene at the customer service desk, demanding a full refund for a box of stovetop stuffing. His argument was a masterpiece of literal interpretation. He was furious that the product, called stuffing, was not actually stuffed inside anything. He felt utterly deceived by the name, claiming it should be labeled dressing if it's cooked in a separate dish. He accused the company of false advertising and ruining the authenticity of his meal. 25. Greyhound's customer service had to field a particularly pungent complaint from a passenger traveling on Thanksgiving Day. The issue was another rider who had brought a full hot turkey dinner on the bus. The complainant wasn't upset about the lack of sharing. They claimed the overwhelming aroma of gravy, turkey, and green bean casserole in the enclosed space was a sensory assault that made the entire 4-hour journey an exercise in nausea. 26. Claiming it was a culinary state of emergency, a woman in North Carolina dialed 911 when her power went out midway through roasting her turkey. She wasn't just reporting the outage. She was demanding the police dispatch an officer to the power company to force them to restore electricity to her house first. She argued that the fate of her family's Thanksgiving dinner was a matter of public importance that should take precedence over all other repairs in the neighborhood. 27. A scathing Yelp review for a Boston market location wasn't about the food quality, but the server's attitude. The diner complained that their waiter was aggressively cheerful, and his relentless holiday spirit felt forced and insincere. The review stated that the server's constant smiling and festive greetings ruined the quiet, contemplative meal they had been hoping for. They were seeking a more professional, less joyful dining experience and left a 1-star review for excessive happiness. 28. On a Nextdoor forum in suburban Atlanta, a Thanksgiving host put one of her guests on blast. The guest's unforgivable crime? Bringing a store-bought pumpkin pie to a potluck that was implicitly understood to be homemade only. The host wrote a lengthy post accusing the guest of phoning it in, devaluing the effort of others, and insulting the sanctity of the potluck with a mass-produced pastry. She asked the neighborhood group if she was justified in never inviting them back. 29. The battle for holiday dominance reached a new low when a homeowner in an Illinois suburb was reported to their HOA. The complaint? They had failed to take down their Halloween decorations. The neighbor argued that the sight of a decomposing zombie animatronic next to their pristine inflatable pilgrim display was thematically jarring and was casting a ghoulish pall over the entire street's festive Thanksgiving atmosphere. 30. The developer of a popular cooking app received a 1-star review titled, "This gravy recipe is a lie." The user was furious that after following the 5-minute foolproof gravy recipe to the letter, his gravy turned out lumpy. He didn't blame his whisking skills, but instead accused the app's creators of digital sabotage and culinary fraud. He demanded a refund for the app and compensation for the public humiliation he endured serving imperfect gravy. 31. The annual family football game is a Thanksgiving staple, but for one dad in Pennsylvania, its cancellation was a 911-level event. He called the police because his teenage sons refused to play, preferring to stay inside and play video games. He told the dispatcher that their refusal was destroying a sacred family tradition and asked if an officer could come over and talk some sense into them about the importance of fresh air and patriarchal authority. 32. A child's innocent drawing became the subject of a formal complaint at a California elementary school. A parent was livid after seeing their first grader's artwork depicting the first Thanksgiving. The problem wasn't the historical inaccuracy of the Pilgrims and Native Americans sharing a meal. The complaint was that the shared meal in the drawing was a large pepperoni pizza, and the parent felt this promoted a lazy, non-traditional vision of the holiday. 33. On Black Friday, while most were hunting for deals, a woman in Florida was trying to return a half-eaten apple pie to Publix. Her official reason for the return was product failed to perform. When the manager asked for clarification, she explained that the pie did not receive a single compliment from her dinner guests the previous day. She reasoned that a pie of acceptable quality should have generated at least 2 or 3 positive comments, and its failure to do so was a clear defect. 34. Forget fluoride. The city water department in a small Arizona town received a bizarre suggestion via their official complaint hotline. A resident called to complain that the tap water lacked holiday spirit. He seriously proposed that for the week of Thanksgiving, the city should infuse the municipal water supply with subtle hints of seasonal spices like cinnamon or clove to make drinking water a more festive experience for the entire community. 35. Apparently, happiness is a liability. A couple at a TGI Fridays on Thanksgiving filed a complaint with the manager because the family at the next table was too loud and happy. They claimed that the neighboring table's obnoxious laughter and joyful bonding was making their own quiet, tense dinner feel emotionally deficient by comparison. They demanded to be moved to a different section, preferably one with more miserable-looking people. 36. An Airbnb host in Vermont was hit with a 1-star review and a formal complaint after a guest's Thanksgiving stay. The reason? The rental's fireplace was too cozy. The guest claimed the gentle crackling and warmth created emotional dependency, making departure psychologically painful. They recommended the host install less inviting heat sources like electric radiators to maintain healthy traveler detachment. 37. Let's talk about the turkey pardon. A tourist in Washington, D.C. filed a complaint with the National Park Service after witnessing the presidential ceremony. He wasn't a political protester. He was an amateur poultry farmer who was incensed that the pardoned turkey was a subpar specimen of the broad-breasted white breed. He claimed its posture was poor and its wattles were lackluster, and argued that a bird representing the nation should be held to a higher physical standard. 38. A man in San Diego called 911 in a complete panic on Thanksgiving morning. His crisis? He had brined his turkey in a 5-gallon bucket, but now the bird was so waterlogged and swollen, he couldn't physically pull it out of the container. He wasn't asking for cooking advice. He told the dispatcher he needed emergency extraction services, picturing firefighters arriving with the jaws of life to rescue his dinner from its plastic prison. 39. Consumer Reports received a bizarre letter from a subscriber who was furious about their annual review of kitchen ovens. The man complained that the magazine's top-rated oven had cooked his Thanksgiving turkey far too evenly. He argued that a perfect turkey should have some slightly overcooked crispy bits and some juicier, rarer spots. He accused the oven of being soullessly efficient and producing a bird so uniformly cooked it was boring to eat. 40. The Macy's complaint department probably sees it all, but this one was special. A woman demanded a refund for a make-your-own float kit she'd bought for her kids. The problem? The included helium tank was only large enough to inflate the small character balloons. She was enraged that the kit didn't provide enough helium to make a float large enough to actually fly down the street, like the ones on TV. She accused the company of selling a functionally flightless and deeply disappointing product. 41. Following a tense Thanksgiving dinner, a woman from Nevada sent a complaint to the makers of the board game Pictionary. She claimed the game was inherently biased against people with no artistic talent. She was particularly upset about the word dignity, which she was unable to draw, leading to a massive family argument. She proposed the game should include an alternate set of conceptually simple words for the artistically challenged. 42. A resident of a Chicago high-rise filed a noise complaint against the apartment directly above him. The source of the noise wasn't music or a party. It was the aggressive and relentless sound of an electric carving knife being used. He claimed the high-pitched buzzing went on for over 20 minutes, causing him auditory distress and vibrating through his ceiling. He demanded his neighbor switch to a more acoustically considerate manual knife in the future. 43. The day before Thanksgiving, a police officer in rural Kansas performed a traffic stop on a speeding pickup truck. The driver's excuse wasn't a medical emergency. He frantically explained that his mother had called with an urgent request for more canned jellied cranberry sauce, and the last grocery store in town closed in 10 minutes. He argued that the potential for whole berry cranberry sauce being the only option constituted a culinary emergency that justified his excessive speed. 44. At a Golden Corral. Thanksgiving buffet, a diner flagged down the manager with a very serious complaint. He was upset that the buffet line was inefficiently organized. Specifically, he argued that placing the gravy boat before the mashed potatoes was a fundamental design flaw. This forced patrons to either get gravy first and risk it getting cold, or backtrack in line, causing chaos. He presented a hand-drawn diagram of his proposed, more logical buffet layout. 45. A woman in South Carolina called animal control with a strange report. She claimed a flock of wild turkeys in her neighborhood was loitering with intent. She insisted the birds were congregating on her lawn and staring at her house in a menacing way, fully aware of what day it was. She wasn't just concerned, she was convinced they were planning a preemptive strike and wanted the authorities to disperse the intimidating poultry gang before things escalated. 46. Someone actually filed a complaint with the FDA's public comment portal regarding pumpkin pie. The citizen submitted grievance argued that pumpkin pie should be reclassified as a savory vegetable tart rather than a dessert. The author claimed that its association with sweet desserts was misleading to the public palate, and that its rightful place was alongside the main course, not next to the whipped cream-topped sweets. 47. Following the holiday, a man in New York tried to sue his own brother for emotional distress caused during their family's Thanksgiving dinner. The source of the trauma. His brother, a die-hard Dallas Cowboys fan, celebrated a touchdown so exuberantly that he knocked over the gravy boat, spilling its entire contents onto the centerpiece. The plaintiff claimed this act of negligent celebration permanently stained the family tablecloth and his memory of the holiday. 48. A traveler at LAX filed a formal complaint with the TSA after his carry-on was selected for a secondary screening. The suspicious item wasn't a weapon or a liquid. It was a turducken. The man was furious that the agent seemed unfamiliar with the poultry within a poultry delicacy and insisted on swabbing the deboned, multi-layered roast for explosives. He claimed their culinary ignorance caused an unnecessary delay and disrespected the integrity of his meticulously prepared bird. 49. The manager of a Williams-Sonoma received a heated complaint from a customer trying to return a used turkey baster. The reason for the return? The customer claimed the device was too powerful. He argued that the suction was so strong it was aggressively pulling all the juices from the bottom of the pan, making a loud slurping noise that startled his cat and disturbed the peaceful roasting ambiance of his kitchen. 50. On a community Facebook group in Maine, a resident warned his neighbors about a local pie scam. He had bought a pumpkin pie from a roadside farm stand, only to discover upon cutting it at home that the filling was made from butternut squash, a common substitute. He was outraged, calling it a gourd-based bait and switch, and accusing the farmer of defrauding the public by passing off a lesser squash as a true pumpkin. 51. A restaurant patron in Las Vegas left a 1-star TripAdvisor review for a high-end Thanksgiving buffet, not because of the food, but because of the ice sculptures. He complained that the elaborate turkey-shaped sculpture was melting asymmetrically, causing the left wing to droop in a way that he found aesthetically displeasing and, frankly, a little depressing. He wrote that the undignified melting cast a pall over the entire meal. 52. The fire department in a quiet Florida suburb received a panicked 911 call about a house on fire. When they arrived, they found no flames, just a home filled with thick, black smoke. The homeowner hadn't burned the turkey. She had attempted to deep fry a completely frozen 20-pound bird, causing a massive eruption of boiling oil. Her complaint to the dispatcher? The turkey's packaging didn't include a sufficiently large and bold warning against deep frying a solid block of ice. 53. A guest staying at a relative's house for Thanksgiving called the non-emergency police line to file a complaint about the home's substandard sleeping arrangements. She reported that her host had given her an air mattress that audibly deflated by approximately 8% over the course of the night. She wasn't asking for a hotel voucher, but she wanted the police to document the inadequate hospitality in an official report. 54. A complaint was filed with the National Weather Service by a man from Ohio who was furious about the Thanksgiving Day forecast. He didn't claim the forecast was inaccurate. He claimed it was too perfect. He argued that the sunny, 65-degree weather was unseasonably pleasant and lured his family outside for a post-dinner walk, which significantly cut into the time traditionally reserved for watching football and slipping into a food coma on the couch. 55. Following a potluck dinner, a church administrator had to mediate a dispute that began with a formal written complaint. One parishioner accused another of passive-aggressive Tupperware usage. The offender had brought a green bean casserole in a high-end name-brand glass container, which made everyone else's disposable aluminum pans and generic plastic tubs look cheap and thoughtless. The complaint alleged this was a deliberate act of kitchenware snobbery meant to shame the other contributors. 56. A man in Idaho sent a furious email to his internet service provider on Thanksgiving night, complaining of an outage. He wasn't upset about missing a movie or being unable to browse the web. His complaint was that the lack of Wi-Fi forced him to engage in unstructured and prolonged conversation with his visiting in-laws, an experience he described as mentally taxing and a direct violation of his holiday peace. 57. A pet owner filed a complaint against a local groomer, accusing them of giving his golden retriever a judgmental haircut just before Thanksgiving. He claimed the groomer had styled the dog's fur in a way that made it look disappointed and condescending. The owner insisted the dog's new look was casting a critical eye on his family's dinner preparations, and even uploaded side-by-side photos to prove it. He demanded a partial refund and a public apology for emotional damage inflicted by canine disapproval. 58. The city's sanitation department got an earful from a furious resident on Thanksgiving morning. The complaint? The garbage truck disturbed his spiritual tranquility. He argued that the sound of the compactor at 7 a.m. was anti-pilgrim behavior and proposed a national quiet hours law banning trash collection, leaf blowers, and vacuuming on all federal holidays. He called it a matter of national gratitude preservation. 59. At a family gathering in Texas, a truce was broken and 911 was called. The caller, a woman in her late 20s, reported her aunt for a culinary crime. The aunt, who was in charge of the sweet potato casserole, had secretly used salt instead of sugar in the recipe. The niece didn't see this as a simple mistake. She was convinced it was a premeditated act of Thanksgiving sabotage and demanded that an officer come and take a statement from everyone who had tasted the salty abomination. 60. The famous Butterball turkey. Talkline received a call from a woman in absolute hysterics. She had thrown away the little bag she found inside the turkey, only to be told later it contained the giblets. She was inconsolable, not because she wanted to use them, but because she was convinced she had performed an unnecessary organ removal, and the turkey was now incomplete. She wanted to know if there was a way to make the turkey whole again before her guests arrived. 61. After a particularly tense family dinner in Connecticut, a man sent a long, formal complaint email to the Thanksgiving host, his own sister. He accused her of creating a politically motivated and deliberately antagonistic seating chart. He claimed his placement next to his conspiracy theorist uncle was not a coincidence, but a calculated act of familial psychological warfare designed to ruin his digestion and punish him for a disagreement they'd had in July. 62. A user left a scathing one-star review for his new, top-of-the-line smart oven. His complaint? The oven's highly advertised AI-powered turkey mode had failed him. He had input the bird's weight and desired crispiness, but the result was a dry turkey. He blamed the oven for its lack of geographic awareness, claiming its algorithm failed to account for the low humidity in his desert climate. He demanded a software update that included regional atmospheric data. 63. A network television station received a formal complaint from a parents group after its annual broadcast of A Charlie Brown Thanksgiving. The complaint stated that the television special promotes a nutritionally bankrupt holiday narrative. They were outraged that the climactic feast consisted of buttered toast, popcorn, jelly beans, and pretzels, arguing that it glorified junk food and set a poor example for impressionable young viewers. 64. A woman went on a tirade on a local grocery store's Facebook page, claiming she was personally victimized by their holiday hours. The store had closed at 3 p.m. on Thanksgiving Day. She had forgotten to buy whipped cream for her pumpkin pie and was furious that the store had abandoned her in her hour of dessert-related need. She accused the management of prioritizing their employees' family time over her culinary emergencies. 65. A 911 dispatcher in a quiet Ohio suburb had to patiently listen to a man complain about his neighbor's holiday parking. A guest's car was parked mere inches over the property line, infringing on the man's driveway. The caller didn't just want the car moved. He described the parking job as a calculated act of territorial aggression and a passive-aggressive declaration of war intended to ruin his holiday peace. 66. The organizer of a small town's Thanksgiving parade received a complaint about the local high school's marching band. The issue wasn't their musical ability, which was described as adequate. The complaint was about their song choice. Instead of an upbeat, festive march, they played a surprisingly somber and introspective piece of classical music. The complainant felt this sucked the joy out of the procession and was an act of musical malpractice. 67. A premium dog food company received a one-star product review for their Thanksgiving feast-flavored wet food. The dog's owner was deeply disappointed because after serving the meal, her beagle showed no visible signs of gratitude. She complained that the food failed to deliver the promised holiday joy, citing a distinct lack of enthusiastic tail wags as proof that the product was emotionally unfulfilling for her pet. 68. Someone sent a handwritten letter to the Ziploc Corporation with a complaint about their gallon-sized freezer bags. The issue arose after Thanksgiving when he was storing leftovers. He claimed the bag's unflinching transparency was a problem, as it constantly showcased the sad, congealed reality of the meal being over. He requested they develop a line of opaque, optimism-preserving bags to protect users from the melancholic sight of leftover turkey. 69. And for the final course of insanity, a citizen in Oregon filed a formal proposal with his state representative to have the date of Thanksgiving changed. He argued that holding the holiday on a Thursday was a tradition rooted in gross inefficiency. His complaint outlined the disruption to national workflow and proposed moving Thanksgiving to the fourth Friday of November, creating a more logical and productive three-day weekend. So yeah, maybe the real Thanksgiving tradition isn't food or family. It's losing your mind over both. Which one of these complaints made you laugh the most? Tell me in the comments. Hit like if your turkey survived the chaos and subscribe. Because human nonsense never takes a holiday.